Dakota Rudesill is a national security law professor at The Ohio State University, joining us live now to continue this conversation. Dakota, good to see you. What concerns you the most right now about Russia's nuclear capabilities and the possibility of a confrontation on this level?
Well, I won't mince words. We're in the worst international security crisis probably since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. And the concern here is that Vladimir Putin would become so desperate by the situation in Ukraine, his continuing losses, that he would decide at some point that he's going to try to escalate the situation by resorting to use of probably one or maybe two smaller nuclear weapons in Ukraine to try to intimidate Ukraine into surrender, try to intimidate NATO into abandoning the Ukrainians. But the risk there is that we don't know how the escalation cycles would go. The United States and NATO would need to respond, at least with looking carefully at what Russia's doing, potentially changing our alert levels. And we don't know necessarily how that might spiral.
And do you believe that the U.S. and NATO have responded adequately to this point based on what we know publicly?
I think that the United States and NATO have played this exactly right. They've paid very close attention to what Vladimir Putin and the rest of the Russian leadership has said with regard to nuclear forces. Our intelligence apparatus is carefully watching them. But right now, Russia has done nothing, despite its nuclear threats, its words. So far, Russia's done nothing to actually change the status or the deployments of its nuclear forces. And so there's no need for the United States, which always has part of its nuclear force on alert. There's no need for the United States to raise its alert level and start one of those escalatory spirals.
Well, so let's talk about the test from Russia. They were testing these long-range missiles recently. What exactly are they testing, and what did we learn?
Well, the most recent test by Russia was of an intercontinental, meaning global range, intercontinental ballistic missile. It was unarmed, and it is, as we understand it, probably the last operational test before Russia deploys this new type of missile. It's called the Sarmat. NATO calls it the Satan II, and the 2 is a reference to the missile that it's replacing, which is the SS-18, which carries 10 large thermonuclear warheads. It's called Satan because it's such a destructive missile, potentially, by having 10 nuclear warheads on one missile.
Right. And Dakota, for that reason, some say it should be banned. Do you think so?
Well, that's exactly right. And that's what I wrote in the Stanford Journal of International Law a couple of years ago, arguing that whenever the arms control process resumes between the United States and Russia, that the top priority of the United States should be a complete ban on land-based missiles that have more than one warhead, such as the Sarmat. And the reason for that is that by concentrating many nuclear weapons in one place, if you have a nuclear crisis where both sides are getting really nervous about the other shooting, having so many nuclear weapons on one missile changes the calculus. And the worry is that it could signal to one side or the other that's nervous that actually the incentives are that they should shoot first and destroy the other side's missiles that have so many warheads concentrated in one place. And obviously, shooting first, starting a global thermonuclear war would probably escalate very quickly. So I think we need a treaty to completely ban them.
And how likely do you think that is?
Well, I'm going to be frank. I don't think it's very likely at all right now. As I point out in the article that I wrote, in 1993, the United States and Russia agreed to a treaty called START II. And START II had a number of provisions, and one of them was a complete ban on missiles that have more than one warhead in them. The United States basically implemented that treaty. All of our land-based missiles right now in North Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana, they each only have one nuclear warhead. Russia did not. Russia's, again, got the SS-18 with 10 nuclear warheads on every missile. So right now, I think obviously relations are very strained. I think the chances of arms control in the near future are dim. But at some point, relations will change. And I think we should be ready with a proposal to say, let's completely ban them.
Some have categorized this testing of the ICBM as a non-event. Real quickly, do you think it was, or did it show another level of concern?
Well, I wouldn't call it a non-event, but it's less event than Russian President Vladimir Putin wants it to be. It was a non-event in the sense that this was a developmental test of a missile that Russia has been designing for over 2 decades. The Russians, in fact, informed the United States military well in advance of the test, as the U.S. and the Russians typically do. So in that sense, I don't think, it certainly wasn't any sort of armed attack or warning shot. But still, I'm concerned about it, because what it reflects is Russia hanging on to a type of missile that has 10 nuclear warheads on every single missile. And I just think that there's always the risk that things could go wrong. And what if there was what if there's an unauthorized or accidental launch of even one missile with 10 nuclear warheads? I mean, that's enough to wreck a country.
It changes the ballgame. I mean, that's World War III. Any misinterpretation of these actions is a scary threat and reality to comprehend. Dakota, Rudesill, appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.